Okay, so we are exactly on the dot at 1:15, so I will probably gently start then. So I hope everyone had a nice stretch and cup of tea and whatever they needed. I'm Anna. I'm also hosting some of these panels, and you'll also be hearing from Aidan later as well. So this is our Patient's Perspective panel, and huge thank you to both Kanu and Helene for coming to do this and being willing to share their stories with us. We really appreciate it. They've had two slightly different experiences, so, and please, gosh, correct me if I'm wrong, but Kanu, I think you had a psychedelic assisted therapy with MDMA. It was MAPS phase 2 trial, and that was for post-traumatic stress disorder. And Helene is going to be talking about her experience in Germany with ayahuasca for depression. And I'm not going to tell you any more than that because they can tell you much better than I can. So Kanu, if we could start with you, please.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kanu. I'm a former patient, as Anna said, in the phase 2 MDMA PTSD MDMA-assisted psychotherapy trials. So that's like a lot together. And I did that in 2018, a couple of years ago. I'm also currently an activist. I've done some research. And I'm hoping to be a therapist of my own, right, at some point. But to any extent, so the way I'm going to kind of structure the first like my 15 minutes is I'll walk you guys kind of through what kind of like incited the traumas, and then I'll walk you through the study, and then kind of like what came after the study. And so to any extent, the kind of like initial traumas that I kind of dealt with for most of my life were kind of effectively like kind of very aggressive bullying. There's plenty of colorful examples, but I just used to deal with a lot of students of a kind of less diverse background, often commenting and chasing me through the hallways and just kind of doing various things to kind of make life a little tougher growing up. Along with that, I come from a very Indian household, and with that, as I'm sure many minorities know, academics can be a very important thing, and with that comes a lot of pressure. And some folks have a more orthodox way of kind of dealing with their children, and so that kind of like left its impressions. And so like over the years, as I grew up, as I got to like around 12 or 13, I'd already kind of dealt with like a solid amount of traumas, both at home and at school, both physically, verbally, emotionally, kind of all different angles of it. And so by the time I had gotten to 13, I kind of reached this point where I was kind of hitting like a breaking point. And then that's kind of when the inciting incident kind of came in. And so around that age, I was sexually assaulted a few times. And then following that, I had some kind of lower level traumas I would kind of classify after, like from my like 12 to like 18 age range. And so, kind of by the time I had gotten to college, things had kind of progressed to a point where I was getting flashbacks. I was getting extremely irritable. And I just kind of this like inner rage that like could not be, physically dealt with, along with, just horrible nightmares and, flashbacks, hitting me in almost some of the like worst points of my life. And so by the time I got to college, I hadn't really gotten the chance to really, try doing therapy to a real extent because like, as I mentioned before, I come from a more orthodox household where mental health is kind of less respected. And so, when I had gotten to college, things kind of just flew kind of more off the handle because at this point, I was dealing with flashbacks, nightmares, just being constantly angry all the time, having this like physical tension in my muscles constantly. And so what, I did what kind of most, freshmen do. And I, had a lot of fun and I was able to kind of cope with it in maybe not the most productive of ways. And, as I kept, going through my first semester, the coping had become worse and worse and worse. I'm a college kid. I kind of have like freedom for the first time. And so I start to do, some more, risky behaviors, like when I started driving, a lot more in my freshman year of college, it would kind of get to a reckless point because like when you're at a point where like life is kind of bearing down on you in all kind of angles, it can be pretty tough to really value yourself and like what you're trying to do. And so when it gets to that point, if you have if you're having a hard time like kind of approaching that line, one of the ways, you can kind of get around it functionally is if you start doing more reckless things. So I would just drive extremely fast. I mean, if you're driving a car going 160 miles per hour and something happens, it can be a little tough. But to an extent, that's all just to kind of say that, by this point in college, it was kind of reaching the point where either I was going to kill myself or like, something was going to snap and something would happen. But just in kind of like the nick of time, I had met a friend of mine who had really, who had heard about the MDMA PTSD trials and whatnot, and had really, really cared for me deeply and kind of really pushed me to go seek some mental health help. And so as I started to kind of like consider it more and more, I eventually started doing the MDMA PTSD trials because, when I was kind of presented with it, it was kind of clear that like I wasn't really kind of coping properly with what was going on in my life. And it was clear that, if I didn't do something now, it would like very likely get worse. And so it was kind of presented to me, they were like, if you try this trial, you can potentially, address your PTSD. And if things go well, like we can continue our study, and they were like, you get to try MDMA, which is pretty cool for, an 18-year-old. And so, that kind of, brings me to the study. And so the way the kind of study worked functionally was you would have 3 sessions on the MDMA over like a several month period. For me, it was like 6 or 7 months. And I had 3 MDMA sessions and then a lot of like regular therapy in between. It was just like regular talk therapy. I would go in, speak with the therapist, tell them about my symptoms, tell them about what was going on. And so to any extent, after about like a month of like kind of regular talk therapy, getting used to the therapist, kind of building a rapport, I'd done my first MDMA session. And when I had done it, it kind of fully changed my perspective on everything. And so kind of more broad, basically, the first MDMA session kind of addressed those kind of original, like kind of core traumas with like the sexual assault and the kind of bigger things. The second session had kind of addressed the kind of smaller traumas in comparison, like the bullying and like, like the abuse from when I was younger, as well as like various other things. And then the kind of third session had addressed, how I was going to move forward functionally from those traumas. And so to any extent, the thing that really, brought about the change in me when it came to the therapy was kind of 2 major factors. One was having the ability to truly like connect with someone. My therapist and my, psychiatrists were like very well versed what they were they were very well versed with, with the material and like, also like from a culture perspective of where I was coming from, because they could see my perspective. And so building that connection was like truly transformative because it showed me kind of a different perspective on relationships. And then the second thing was being able to actually deal with these traumas in such a way where it wouldn't break me down, where I could face them, fully kind of remember them, and actually be able to interact with them without just having my entire psyche kind of like black it out and like break down. And so like through that kind of combination, when you go on, MDMA, when you go on MDMA for the first time. So for those of you who have like never done MDMA, like psychedelics are kind of curious. So like all of them kind of give you visuals to an extent. With MDMA, they're more internal. So like when you're on the drug, the way the kind of session works is they give you the drug, talk to the therapist for a little bit, and eventually, you start to feel about 30 minutes and you start to feel the drug start to take effect. And once it starts to take effect, you can kind of like feel this like ease just kind of flush through your body. Once that kind of happens, they give you what was it called? They give you an eye shade, some headphones, and then they, wrap you in a blanket and they give you, and they play some very kind of like soothing music. And the point of that is to kind of get you in this meditative state. And so when you're in this kind of like meditative state, it's effectively like living a dream, but you can actually remember everything. but like all the things that are possible in a dream are very much like the same in this case. So like every time I would do one of these trips, the initial, place that I would start off was in this kind of vastness of space. I was surrounded by stars, planets, and just below me, like, I don't know if anyone's ever watched Avatar. It's like similar to when like Aang goes into like the Avatar state, but effectively below me was like the set of piano keys that went on for like all of eternity. And like, kind of Marvel logo style, I could see like replays of my memories in each one of the keys. And so every time I had kind of gone into one of the trips, that would be kind of be the first place I would see, and I'd be able to run down, like see my life progress. And so one of the things that, can be so transformative about simply just kind of like visualizing something like that, especially when you're in this kind of like PTSD riddled state that's pushing you to the edge of suicide, is being able to see yourself actually live out like a life. And so like effectively, I wish I had more time to like get into the visions because it's really cool. But like effectively, I was able to go through these kind of, these different visions and whatnot, and really like actually interact with my traumas. In some cases, like, where like I'm dealing with a version of myself from a younger age, like, like me running from some bullies or something, I have the capacity in these visions to literally go into the situation, like pick myself up and then like walk out, which is like, like it, when it truly feels entirely real, it changes, it can really feel like you're truly, living it. And it like, it's kind of indescribable, like how it like just releases the tension from your muscles, like everywhere from your muscles to your eyes, everything just loosens up, and you can feel like the memories literally just flowing out of you as you like process these memories and you interact with them. And then, on top of that, once you come out of this therapy, right, like once you come out of the visions, having that rapport that I had with my therapist allowed me to really process it and then take it that step further. So when I was by myself, I could meditate on it, I could think on it, and really progress from that point and really address, the traumas, but also the behaviors and whatnot that went along with those traumas. And so, after going through this like therapy, for for a couple months, it kind of led me to a point where I could, really reestablish myself as a new person. And I was able to truly start going after kind of my larger goals, of like bringing change. And sorry.
No worries, Kanu. And also, if you want to speak, it's not a hard and fast deadline. So, if you want to speak for another 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that's absolutely fine.
Oh, that'd actually be awesome. Yeah, no, sorry. I was just like looking at my notes and I was like, oh, crud. Like, usually this is a little longer. Yeah.
No, please do speak as much as you want.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. I'll get it rolling. Yeah. And so like, after like, being able to like really, talk out these, these incredible visions and really get into the detail of it, because like when you're dealing with your traumas as well as like your personal identity on that level, because, as like in any set of like, dealing with, traumas, especially from a young age, that affects right who you are. And so if you don't have the space, in the room to feel comfortable talking about that stuff, it can really limit you. But like, I've never like, what was like as earth shattering as the MDMA was, what was also earth shattering was being able to like tell these like two folks who like I'd never really like known, particularly well before, say things I'd never told anyone else and feel safe, which for someone in my position, without like connection to like a lot of mental health resources, for a lot of my life, that also just like that just blew my mind. Like it gave me a sense of safety that like I'd never really felt, or at least felt for like a long, long while. And so, after being able to like feel that and, learn how to, really interact with those kind of traumas and kind of like get those kind of like major traumas out of the way, it allowed me to kind of become more of who I like am today, like a more kind of fully formed individual. Whereas before, my entire life was just kind of consumed around just pushing to a point where I wanted to achieve something, maybe help some people, but ultimately I kind of just wanted to die. I mean, I like was either hoping I would like kill myself or at some point, like do something where something would cause it, And so now I'm sitting here and like I'm coming out of the traumas, and it's like I still remember everything. In fact, I remember more than I did when I had the PTSD, because like when you can like meditate for like 1,000 years on like a planet, you know what I mean, and remember everything, that you once couldn't, it kind of like, it almost feels like putting pieces back into who you are. And so after doing, all of that, and like being able to kind of like set up a new identity that reconciles these traumas but can move forward, I was able to like lead, much better than I ever had been before. And the kind of big thing I had noticed in like my leadings, I was able to connect with people a lot more, and I was able to be a lot more effective as a leader, because when you focus on people's mental health, you not only help the like kind of larger environment, but you also help people become just better problem solvers, right? If someone can better address their mental health, and better address where they are at, it can both stabilize how they're feeling, but also improve how good their problem solving skills, which then allows them to make their very situation better, which then ideally leads to a better kind of mental health state. And so after kind of pushing for mental health, I had seen that with the help of a lot of allies up at UConn, we were able to actually change the campus. We got policy change. We were able to get a cycle, mental health growth going at the university, and now cultural change, where no matter whatever is going on campus, people will always involve mental health, and they'll always have that kind of focus on it. I mean, now mind you, the progress is not as as much as I'd hope for, because we always hope a little higher than we can get to, but what I've noticed is that the whole climate around every one of these other issues, from race to the LGBT community to sexual assault to education, all of it greatly improved in how effective they were, but also the dialogue around how to actually address those kind of issues on a larger level, because now people were finally taking in the kind of mental state that everyone was kind of dealing with. Well, like to an extent, just people's general mental health. And it really, it was truly, it was just kind of truly amazing to see that kind of change take place on a large scale. And so to kind of like, wrap up my whole point, sorry that got dragged a little bit, is, just to say that like mental health, in my own journey has changed my life on great scale. And because of it, like I've seen, in a much kind of broader sense, how, just small changes to like our mental health, if you can project them far, can really have a large scale impact. Which is why I just, all the more I think this kind of therapy is like so important. But yeah, in any case, that's just my 2 cents on it. Yeah.
All right, Kanu, I'll ask you another question. So someone's asked you, first of all, thank you so much for being so courageous in speaking about your experience, and that you had a therapist in the room. And do you feel like they guided you on what to focus on, or was it a kind of a much more internal process?
So every session always started with the meditation. And so like, as for like the MDMA sessions, it always started with my visions. And so like I would start at, like at those piano keys, and like it depending. So like there was kind of like 2 ways you could like interact with it almost. Like I could either dive back into like memories by like just hopping in the piano keys, and then like, boom, I'm like back in a memory. Like sometimes the memory, I'm like either in it or I'm like on it. Like it takes me to one of the planets and I just like remember it, and meditate on it. And then usually from there, they like kind of take the vision that you had, like what you went through, and then they kind of dissect it with you, try to figure out connections from what they like learned about you, I'm assuming, and connect it to the vision and whatnot, try to take meaning from it and stuff like that. And, figure out kind of where to go from there. So like, like the one where I was like literally like picking myself up as like a kid. That one, like we kind of like talked about it after, and like we were just kind of like one of the things we kind of like, managed to take from that was both like A, the healing effect of it, but also B, that like, like I'm not like said child, and like, I can grow from said point, and I can be the person that I need to be to protect myself and feel safe and know that I'm safe in my own skin, you know? But yeah, does that like answer the question?
Definitely, absolutely. I mean, then there's lots of interesting questions. So you kind of alluded to this already, but there's things about how do you feel that your spiritual beliefs or values, do you feel like they kind of gave your visions more kind of gravity, and do you think it affected your spiritualness after this? It sounds like it sort of did, because you became kind of started to
Yeah.
this practice.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, there was one vision, during the trial where like, so I was named after a god called Lord Krishna, if like anyone knows that is. And so like, and like I was born on the same day. So like, I don't know, like I've always had like a little bit of like a connection to him. And so like one of the visions I had, I was like in spit, like instead of like going on the keyboard or going on, one of the planets. So like also, so the other thing too is like when you're in like the initial state, as it were, like I just kind of call it the loading screen in my mind, if I'm being honest, because like it's the first thing that I saw in every one of the visions. Is there's like you, but then there's also like a bigger version of you, like I don't know, like a galactus version of you that's like moving the same. And then if you like hop off the keys, like you can like just fly through space. And one of the times I just like hopped off and I was able to like talk to Krishna for like what felt like, like eons of time, because I was just like asking him, just a ridiculous number of questions as fast as I could. And he was responding. And it was curious because like, I don't know, like, when you get an experience like that, you never know. Like, I don't know, like I was caught in between of like attributing it to something like bigger, but also at the same point, reconciling with like what the messages are that are being sent to me and what I can take from them on just kind of like a grounded level. So like, at the very least, after the whole thing, like, I feel like there's an interconnectedness about everything. And I think that could be explained from like a physics perspective, if you really wanted to, that also can be felt. And I think, like all spirituality is feeling that, to me, is just like feeling that energy that flows through everything. I'm not gonna lie, like watching like something like Avatar or whatnot is really funny after, because like you get kind of what they're talking about, because they're like, oh, like everything's connected to everything. And like reading your religious books, you're like, oh, like now I get what you're talking about. And when people are like talking about like these different like, like the third eye or like your heart chakra or this chakra, it's just like a feeling that feels like pure energy just coming out. But all it is just like, blood flow and stuff. So I think there is something kind of greater that connects everything, but I don't know how, sentient said thing is, but it's definitely something in my opinion. But
Brilliant.
yeah.
Thank you so much. And I've got the go ahead that Aidan is ready to share Helene's side. And Helene, thank you so much again as well for coming in so last minute. And we've got plenty of time. And Kanu, thank you so much for answering some of those questions just then. So Helene, if you're ready, and Aidan can do the slide sharing, and yeah, we've got plenty of time and things.
Okay, so today I'm going to talk about my experience with ayahuasca. But first of all, maybe something about my medical history. So since I was 16, I think, I've had always every 3 or 4 months, I would have like depressive periods. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and PTSD. And as Kanu also told, I also suffered from, I couldn't really sleep at times. And I think, I don't know, shall I explain also what bipolar disorder is, or just, is it enough to mention?
Completely up to you. You can give it an overview if you'd like, but it's up to you.
I had sleeping problems, and during the depressive periods, I would have like a lot of suicidal ideation and just lose all interest in everything that I usually love, because usually I'm a really happy person, actually. I would say a joyful person that loves life and loves all this around us. So but then I was treated first with SSRIs, which is not actually indicated for bipolar disorder, but there was like a little mistake in the beginning, with venlafaxine, sertraline, mirtazapine, clozapine, which is an antipsychotic, and none of them worked. And I also went to psychotherapy, and it did work like a while, but then a depressive period could always just come by and just slap me in my face and take away all my fun in life, which wasn't very nice. But I still wanted to live my life. So I went traveling. I went to do a voluntary service in South America. And afterwards I went traveling to Peru. And although I was traveling, although I had a great time, I met wonderful people, I sort of lost my way and I got into a really severe depressive period, and also substance abuse, cocaine and alcohol. And I started doing what is called risk-seeking behavior. And I had suicidal ideation. And as my destructive behaviors were getting worse, I suddenly heard from another traveler from that ayahuasca thing. And I was like, what's that? And at that point, I was really longing for death. I was like, yeah, sure, let's try it. I mean, why not? And if I die from it, the sooner the better. So this was kind of the set at that point. And then I went to a little village near Pucallpa. Now you can put the first slide, Aiden. You can see a few pictures of Pucallpa. So it's a small village, and it's known to be like the portal to the Peruvian jungle, to the Peruvian rainforest, at the rivers of the Napo, at the river bank of the Napo River, which is an inlet of the Amazon. And after a 3-day boat ride, I arrived at the little village and at the retreat center Arco-Iris. So it's not a clinic and there's no psychotherapists, but it is a very, very, it is a place for healing. It's called a healing center. And the shamans you could say they take the role of the psychotherapists in my story. And so these shamans were from the Shipibo people. Also, all that area is from the Shipibo people. And instead of a cabinet, now you can put the next slide, we did the therapy session in a maloca, which you can see on the next slide, I think. Yes, so these are different malocas. My maloca, where I did my ayahuasca ceremonies, I did 4 of them, by the way, in 1 month, was the one on the left-hand side. The one on the bottom is also a maloca, where I went last year to Brazil, but this was a different center and a different story. So I did like a 1 month, I decided to do a 1 month retreat. And every week we would have one ayahuasca ceremony. And in order to get prepared for the ceremony, you have to actually prepare a bit, because ayahuasca has a long history of ethnomedical use. So there's a lot of rituals around it. And of course, that does alter the setting quite a bit. So you do it in this traditional wooden roundhouse, and then first of all, you have to do 1 week of dieta, which means no meat, no fish, no animal products at all, no salt and no sugar, no spices, actually just raw fruit and cooked vegetables. And just like in Western psychiatries, no sex and no drugs and no other distractions such as cell phones. And so actually I was just, was just forced to spend a lot of time with myself in the rainforest and to think a bit which intentions I would want to set, what I actually, just before a psychotherapy, what do you want to change? What could help you? What makes you suffer? These questions. And of course, the shamans give you assistance and they help you set your intention and give you guidance in that process. And the ceremonial gathering then takes place in Maloca, and the shamans sing and they smoke mapacho. I think on one of the pictures you'll also see mapacho. It's jungle tobacco, but has no effects at all. And there's usually meditation and like a grounding ritual with also rapé, which are also plants from the rainforest, but they do not have any effects besides that they're traditionally used in these rituals. So the shaman goes around and assists, and you can always talk to them, and they also give you emotional support throughout the trip. And yeah, at that time I want to mention the names of my shamanic teachers. There was Justina and Asuncion, Juan Ruiz, and Cesar Ruiz. And I'm really grateful because now you can actually continue with the slides. I'll say something about the next ones, what you can see in the pictures. Aidan? Ah, yeah, cool. So this is the Maloka inside. This is the ceremonial place. And as it's usually at night, on the right-hand side, that's how it looks usually when you do the ceremony. And yeah, next slide, please. Now we are ready for the next slide, where you can see what ayahuasca actually is, because that's also interesting. Aidan, would you please put the next slide? So ayahuasca is a traditional brew, and it's made of the ayahuasca vine. I would, oh no, it's not working.
Sorry, Aidan's Wi-Fi is
Oh no,
just dropped off.
Okay, then I'll just explain it, and hopefully you can have a look at the pictures.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, and if it drops off again, you know what, we'll just what we'll do is we'll get them up during the break, and then we can sort of have them maybe going over and people can see them then.
Cool, thanks, Aidan. So the next slide shows the drug or the medication, or even cure if you want so. But is Aidan back? Oh yes, nice. So here you can see the ingredients of ayahuasca, of the brew. So ayahuasca is the vine on the bottom right, and it's cooked together with this very normal-looking plant, chacruna or Psychotria viridis, which contains DMT, dimethyltryptamine. And ayahuasca, the vine, actually only contains the monoamino oxidase inhibitors that make the DMT stay longer in your system. Otherwise, it's just going to be 10 minutes. So, and you want to work in a ceremony, you want to work on your problems, and that's why you usually, it usually takes like 10 or 12 hours, a ceremony like this. And Albert Hoffman said about his LSD experience that LSD wanted to tell him something. It gave me an inner joy, an open-mindedness, a gratefulness, open eyes, and an internal sensitivity for the miracles of creation. And actually, that's pretty much what it did for me back then, because I mean, I came out of depression, all this emptiness and loneliness and numbness and seemingly everlasting captivity in my own rigid thinking patterns. And suddenly I felt something. I felt sadness, and I felt anger at times, and I felt love and connection, and I felt like I was part of something, like part of something bigger. I was like, I felt really connected, and that was something really new to me. Especially at that point, I couldn't see or feel it at all. I was just so deeply stuck in this depressive thinking process where everything's negative and everything's just draining and terribly tiring, and you just don't want to be anymore. And then suddenly you feel love and connection, and suddenly everything seems to make sense on a deeper level. I mean, it's difficult to express because it is a mystical experience, but it was so healing. It felt like tearing open old, badly healed wounds and going through that shit again, like encountering people from my past and mixed with crazy fractal patterns of all colors. I went through these old suppressed feelings, and all that pain came up again, but it was kind of a soothing process of healing, and all the madness and the grief and the pain, they felt like they would just transform to love, acceptance, joy, and bliss. And I think we can go on to the next slide. I'm sorry, because there's a little more to see. Aidan? Oh yes, cool. This is how ayahuasca looks when it's brewed. It's like a very dark juice. Yeah, in the middle. And on the right-hand side, you can see the chacruna leaves boiling, and the left is ayahuasca again. Thanks. The next one, please. And this is a shamanic picture depicted. They were all over the place in the ceremonial room. And on the right-hand side, on the bottom, you can see someone taking ayahuasca in a cup. And on the upper side of the page, you can see agua florida, which is like refreshing, and rapé, and other things that are also used in the ceremony, mapacho as well, but that don't have any known, they're not drugs, they're just there for the ritual use, because it's all in this very traditional, very old traditional of healing. So shamans actually use ayahuasca to heal people from demons. And the ones who felt depressed at points, it does feel like a heavy demon. It does feel like it's haunting you and it's never gonna leave you alone. So I think it does make sense to heal the demon of depression with ayahuasca. But yeah, so this was a really revealing experience for me. And in the following ceremonies, because I had another 3, I would even get the chance to actually set an intention and work on a specific issue that is giving me a hard time in life. And so ayahuasca was definitely a door opener for me to also find other ways than drugs or medicines to get to that state of mind of acceptance, and rather than resistance, and empathy rather than apathy. And this like an optimistic, why not, instead of an agonizing why. And but of course, and I think this is very important to mention, it's not like one ceremony and then you're gonna be totally healed and free of all of that. It's just, it opens your eyes, and then you see, oh, cool, there's things I can change. Wow, I can actually change. I can heal these wounds. I'm not a victim of all my past trauma. Oh yeah, this is a nice picture. It depicts Justina and Asuncion, 2 of my shamanic teachers who were okay with being in the presentation. I asked them. Juan and Cesar didn't want to be in the presentation. So I thank them a lot. They helped me a lot, and I would definitely do that again. I did it once more in Brazil. It wasn't quite the same because the tribe was a different one, a different Amazonian tribe. So the rituals were a bit different, but usually it's like this. It's always more or less the same ritual. And yeah, I don't know what more to say, but psychedelics, they in general just show you this, that you're an intrinsic part of this human family, that we're all members of one consciousness, and that, I don't know, they just strip away all that shit, like our color, or like our skin color or our sexual orientation, or you can suddenly see that we're all actually in the same boat, and they bear the pure essence and the soul, if you want so, because life is a mystery. I mean, yeah, I don't have more to say. Life is a mystery, and it's actually our task to see that again and to remember that. And I mean, we're alive, we have all these experiences, we have our senses, we feel, we just live and do our things and kind of forget about the mystery behind all that and the wonderment, and that's the things that I remembered at that day of my first ayahuasca ceremony, and I will certainly never forget them again. And of course, it's a way of working to actually also attain that state of mind in your usual life. But there's a lot of ways. There's dancing, singing, expressing yourself with arts, or doing yoga or meditation, or whatever makes you feel you want to be 100% here and now because you really like doing what you do right now. And yeah, that was what ayahuasca told me or reminded me of, and I'm so grateful for that. Thanks for your attention, by the way. I think there's one more slide, I'm not sure. And the pictures, I did them, I made them.
That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, Helene, have a look in the chat. There's some lovely message, although someone's just asked about the purging.
Yeah, I saw that there were people writing. I haven't read through them.
I've got some questions for you. So there's kind of a question about set and setting, I suppose, and sort of how does a shaman compare to a psychotherapist? How do you think this would translate, I suppose, in a less traditional, or I suppose more Western setting? And what was the role of setting in your experience?
So I would actually, I believe that what we do have in science is we do have a lot of knowledge and technologies as well. But what shamans do have, what we do not have, is wisdom. I mean, they're working with these plants for thousands of years. They know them and they know what is the best way to use them. And I could not think of any better setting than the one in this shamanic ceremonial center, because you are in a group, you're not alone. There were always at least 2 shamans to guide you, and you're still in your own space. Everyone has his or her own mattress to lay down, and to actually integrate what you're going through. So so I would actually do it the same way if I was a psychedelic psychotherapist. I think I would do it in a rather small group with 2 psychotherapists maybe, and then give everyone his or her space to retreat and to go in the inside, look what is there, what needs to be seen, what needs to be felt, what needs to be maybe felt through again because it hasn't been worked up. I mean, that's why it's trauma, because at that point it was just too much. So you need to have a look at it again and heal it. And so what was the question about the setting, right?
Yeah, I think about how, important is that setting there as well, kind of being in touch with nature.
It is very important, I believe. You feel, because you also make this energy together. You sit down in a circle, you set your intention. All these rituals, they're there to make you feel that this is now a sacred space, a special place, a room that is safe and secure to really look at the deep shit, that usually you would not like to look at. And probably in a speaking therapy, the first time I actually talked about the things that I saw in very vivid hallucinations during my ayahuasca ceremony, it took me like half a year to talk about it for the first time in my psychotherapy. So it took a really long time in psychotherapy, with only psychotherapy. And at the end of my ayahuasca retreat, I shared these things with all the people that did the retreat with me, which I would never have thought possible. And that was really emotional. And yeah, also to share it with other people is like a stuff is also forms and shapes the experience, of course.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. And we've got many more questions, and we're not going to get through them all, but we'll do what we can. I think also it'd be good if you could answer this one as well, Kanu. I think it was originally for you, but I think it would be great to hear both of your answers. So Kanu, if we start with you, but it's just about having done this experience, do you think that it's something that you'll need to do again, or want to do again, or have you done it again since the trial?
Yeah, so so the questions have doing it again effectively. So actually, yeah, so since the trial, Helene definitely like alluded to this, talked about this a little bit, where like after you do something with psychedelics, you kind of like flower almost. Like after I kind of like addressed my traumas and whatnot, like I kind of branched out into a lot more things, which helped me both be just a more kind of like complete person, but more willing to take like calculated but like well thought out risk. Cause so after doing the trials, I had actually started, I tried some LSD, some shrooms. Let's see, I haven't done MDMA since the trial, but that's just like I mean, I probably would, but like getting like clean MDMA is a whole issue. So I just got stuck to like LSD and shrooms. Before the trial, I smoked some weed, but yeah, no, definitely. I kind of do it every I prefer LSD more than so in my ranking, I put it like MDMA, LSD, and shrooms. And like the reason being is because like MDMA, like you like feel stuff and then you get visions, right? LSD, like you feel it for a lot longer and you get like visual distortions where like you look and like the world is like, contorting and whatnot. And then with shrooms, it's like the same like 5 hours or whatever. Plus you get like a little bit of both, but mostly the visual distortions to a great degree. And the reason I like MDMA more than like LSD and like shrooms is because like MDMA, just like from a neuroscientific perspective, literally floods your synapses with dopamine, right? So it's like literally impossible to like be sad. Like you just like the reason I was able to talk about my traumas was like I laughed them out. I didn't cry them out. I like literally laughed them out. Like there's tears coming out, but like it was weird. I felt like the Joker. I was like laughing and I was like crying at the same time. It was weird. But yeah, like I would definitely do MDMA again. It's very, very fun. I don't know if I would do it like any sort of like I'd prefer to do my psychedelics every like couple months, preferably LSD because that's like the easiest access I have to / like relatively safest and kind of gets the job done. And usually what I do is either like I'll have kind of like a night with like maybe one or two, like maybe like 2 to 3 friends, just like close friends, and like we'll do some stuff. And it's usually like very active stuff in nature. Like I'm young, so we like to drive fast, we like to go in the woods and climb stuff, so we'll do something like that. Or I'll like just sit back and like meditate. And they're like not like I'm a little bit competitive, so like I like LSD because it challenges you to meditate. Because like if anyone's ever meditated on like weed or like LSD or anything, just anything in general, any sort of drug, it's kind of hard to like keep one line of thinking through or like one thread. And so LSD is a little bit of a challenge, just like keep that thread going. But if you can, it's really dope because you can really think about a lot of things very deeply and get to some cool conclusions. But yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And the same question for you, Helene. What, having had that experience, do you feel like, and obviously you did a few, I think you did 4 in total, right? Is it something that you feel you need to do again to kind of for your mental health, or do you think that was all you needed from it?
Well, at that point, I think it saved me because I wasn't open for anything anymore. And it showed me that there was still hope. And yes, going through difficult periods, I think it can be a great support to also have a plant to lead you the way. But no, I don't think that I need it anymore because in many things it sort of clicked. And I also did like a normal psychotherapy this year for a month. Funny enough, it was also a month, and also a lot of things happened and changed. So there was one question that's important, the time without a phone and just taking time to look there and to actually spend time, or as I'm like calling it, do inner work and work on your stuff is helping, just that. But ayahuasca sort of, or psychedelics sort of prepare the ground, they prepare the soil. So when you help it with psychedelics, you're gonna get much deeper, and you can actually on a deeper level alter things.
Brilliant, thank you.
And
again,
one more thing I need to say, because I forgot
Okay.
about it to tell, but it's only fair to tell. I did vomit while taking ayahuasca. I felt, but it was part of the experience, and I would not like to cut that out because I felt dreadful, I felt horrible, and I still wanted to keep it back. Just as in life. And at the one moment where I was like, okay, I can't, it's just too much, I have to let go, then I started purging. And it was so cleansing. And the second time was a lot less. It was really not a ghastly experience or something. It just flew out, so I didn't really mind. But yes, fair enough, you have to mention that it's usual.
I think that is going to be my favorite quote from the conference. Is it just feels Great. And actually just so someone's asked about kind of whether you, and again for both of you, whether you think psychedelics can be how important kind of is the integration and having kind of professional support there? Is this something you think that if people are thinking about going and doing it for themselves, whether they could go and do some MDMA maybe with other people there, kind of for safety, obviously, or something? But yeah, how important do you think that is, especially for maybe your first go round? Okay, go on, jump on it then.
Yeah, all right, so I think personally, all right, so in the kind of like last kind of year and a half, I've been like in a gap year, kind of during the pandemic, and what I've noticed is, because I've been around a lot more folks kind of doing psychedelics and whatnot, I've noticed like, therapy and having like professional staff is always like more preferable, right? Like you can have a therapist like there and like do it in an official capacity, like yeah, of course, that's going to be like more preferable. But if that is not readily available, given, the state of, drug laws globally, then yeah, I think it's definitely a move to potentially, try it with, a set, kind of core set of people. But like, it's like any drug. I mean, if you go into it like with well thought like intentions, like, trying to set like, what you're trying to do, really pay attention to the setting, who's in that setting, like all the kind of factors that go into it, you can do it in such a way where you really get something out of it. Before I go and like do stuff by myself, where I meditate, is like I'll write down like a lot of questions that like either I want to ask myself, or I want to pursue or just think about, what I mean, or if I'm having a problem with something I want to really think about. But again, like they are like drugs, right? So like like shrooms, like you will probably throw up or something. Like you're gonna have to go to the bathroom. I mean, it's like, be rare. LSD, like that's 10 hours of your day. I mean? Like that's a commitment. MDMA, like, I mean? Both with trying to get it, it's a commitment, but also like doing it, like that's still 5 hours of just pure joy, which is great. But like, you gotta make sure you're really ready for it. I would definitely not do any of these things in any sort of crowded area ever on your first try. Just like not wise, just not wise. Don't do it. But yeah, I think there's definitely something to offer, and I think if you can do it safely, go for it. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on
it. Yes, definitely the setting is very important, I'd say. And the most important thing is to feel safe. So you need definitely a safe space. And the safe space can also be nature. and friends. But it's just good to have a place where you can, yeah, be. And if you feel dreadful, then just feel dreadful and cry and whatever. But not a public place where you can cry out loud if you need to. And shamans can do a really good work, as I believe, if they're good shamans. So, but in any case, it should be someone experienced and who has just a calm energy or soothing energy. Yeah, with whom you feel really comfortable. It can also be a psychotherapist, or of course. But yeah, I think that's really important.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you both so much. You know, have a read of the chat. There's lots of comments, really lovely comments in there. If you want to, you can probably both see the Q&A box. So if there's anything in there that you would like to answer just by typing it, please do, but don't feel that you have to at all. And just thank you so much for sharing your stories.